Russia is planning on building the world's longest undersea tunnel to Alaska for a whopping $65 billion. It's 3,700 miles and might finally link the countries, literally speaking. As part of this $65 billion project to supply the U.S. with oil, natural gas, and electricity from Siberia, Russia plans to build this expansive tunnel and use it as a transport and pipeline link under the icy Bering Strait. According to Viktor Razbegin, deputy head of industrial research at the Russian Economy Ministry, the project would take 10 to 15 years to complete and could even end up costing closer to $100 billion. It's called the TKM World Link and would be built and controlled in partnership by state organizations and private companies. From Siberia to the U.S., this 3,700-mile transport corridor will feed into the tunnel, which will be 64 miles long, more than twice as long as the underwater section of the Channel Tunnel between the UK and France. According to the plan, 3 sections of the tunnel would connect the US and Russian islands in the Bering Strait. Apparently, this project is purely business, not political, and has a shelf life of between 100 and 200 years, creating economic growth and activity in Alaska for generations to come. It would be a faster, safer, and cheaper way to move freight around the world than container ships, and it's estimated it could carry about 3% of global freight and make about $7 billion a year. According to the plan, the Bering Strait Tunnel alone will cost between $10 billion and $12 billion, and the rest will be spent on the entire transport corridor. This is a huge undertaking. According to TKM World Link, the undersea tunnel would include a high-speed railroad, highway, and pipelines, as well as power and fiber optic cables. Among the partners in the public-private partnership are OAO Russian Railways, National Utility OAO Unified Energy System, and pipeline operator OAO Transneft. The Bering Strait is between the Pacific and Arctic Oceans, separating the Chukchi Peninsula of the Russian Far East from the Seward Peninsula of Alaska. Fun fact, the Bering Strait has been the subject of a scientific theory that humans originated in Asia and migrated to North America via a land bridge known as Beringia, when the lower ocean levels exposed a large stretch of the sea floor. Now it's a treacherous area full of snow and ice, making this project an extremely bold one. So, is this a game changer for US-Russian ties, or just a pipe dream? Pun intended. Well, according to This Week in Asia, now that a US-Canada rail line has been approved, there are fresh hopes that a link can finally be built across the icy 85-kilometer strait. U.S. President Donald Trump's approval of the new $22 billion, 2,400-kilometer railway between the United States and Canada gave new hope to a bigger and bolder infrastructure project. Since the end of the 19th century, engineers, entrepreneurs, and downright dreamers have been intrigued by the prospect of connecting the far east of Russia with the far north of the U.S. with either a tunnel or a bridge. If this is actually built, the US and Russia may eventually own 25%, as well as private investors and international finance agencies cashing in too. Private money will be backed up by the governments. By using fiber optic cables in the tunnel, North America and the far east of Russia will save $20 billion a year on electricity costs. This link could transport commodities from East Siberia and Sakha to North American markets. Both regions contain most of Russia's metal and mineral reserves, yet only 1.5% of the tunnel has been constructed because of a lack of infrastructure and difficult conditions. Japan, China, and Korea have all expressed interest in the project, with Japanese companies offering $60 million a kilometer to tunnel under the Bering Strait. There is the potential for cargo traffic on the World Link to exceed 100 million tons per year, so the investments in the rail section could actually be repaid in 20 years. This idea to link the two countries has been around for a while. In the 1960s, Chinese-American structural engineer Tang Yanglin drew up plans for an intercontinental peace bridge across the Bering Strait, which he imagined as a symbol of international cooperation as well as an important trade route. During the 1890s, the governor of Colorado, William Gilpin, proposed a plan as ambitious as it was ahead of its time to build a railway system that would circle much of the globe and locate in Denver. In order to achieve this, he proposed to crossing the Bering Strait. Despite Gilpin's lack of success, the idea was attractive enough for others to pick up the slack. A few months later, he proposed the construction of a tunnel between the two continents from the Welsh Capes to Desnev, modeled after the infrastructure of Joseph Strauss, the father of the San Francisco Golden State Bridge. Investor Neil Bush, younger brother of U.S. President George W. Bush, traveled to China in 2005 to promote a proposal to dig a transportation corridor beneath the Bering Strait. Sun Myung Moon had a great idea: the World Peace King Tunnel. The tunnel would stretch beneath the Bering Sea between Alaska and Russia, be 53 miles long, and cost billions. Construction, he said, would only take 3 years. This highway would link up with the 8-lane International Peace Highway that Moon had also proposed. The road would be surrounded on both sides by 1 kilometer of land that would belong to no nation. After both projects were completed, traffic could flow freely from the Cape of Good Hope to New York City. There would also be places for travelers to get married in the tunnel as well. Well, 8 months of the year, the Bering Strait is frozen. Temperatures can fall to more than 80 degrees below zero. The region is essentially deserted. Also, the US and Russia haven't been on great terms, so the tunnel obviously never happened. Later that year, during the Republican primary campaign of his brother Jeb Bush in 2015, Neil Bush actually denied having supported the tunnel project, saying that he had traveled with Moon because he was in support of efforts by faith leaders to call their flock into service. There was even infrastructure backed up by the Tsar in 1905. The Tsar Nicholas II himself came to approve the project of a bridge across the strait. Similar to the modern-day project, his dream was to build a Trans-Siberian rail line connecting the Russian Empire and the United States. Approximately $250 million to $300 million was going to be allocated to promote the initiative called Russia Beyond. Unfortunately, the rapid developments of the 20th century caused the project to fall flat from paper to reality. The Russian revolutions, the outbreak of World War I, and the emergence of the Soviet Union kind of threw a wrench in the gears. Back to the modern-day tunnel now. So far, this $100 billion idea remains an idea whose time has yet to come. Yet, the quest continues to build the ultimate bridge to nowhere.